Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into the growing turmoil in Belarus, a story increasingly framed as a confrontation between powerful generals and a long-standing authoritarian ruler. The tension is not just political theater, but a deeper struggle over control, loyalty, and the future direction of the state. Belarus has for decades been ruled through a centralized system where authority flows from the top down. The leader has relied heavily on security forces and the military to maintain stability and suppress dissent. This makes any sign of friction inside those institutions especially significant. The phrase generals versus dictator captures attention because it challenges a long-held assumption. For years, the military in Belarus has been viewed as firmly loyal, disciplined, and tightly bound to the leadership. The idea that this loyalty could be weakening is unsettling for the regime and fascinating for observers. At the heart of the turmoil are reports of disagreements between senior military figures and political leadership. These reports range from quiet policy disputes to more serious claims of resistance against orders. Even when unconfirmed, such stories reshape how people view power in Belarus. The military occupies a unique place in Belarusian society. It is not just a fighting force, but also a symbol of state authority. Parades, uniforms, and public ceremonies reinforce the image of unity and strength. When cracks appear in that image, they carry psychological weight. One source of tension is the increasing politicization of the armed forces. Generals are expected not only to defend the country, but also to support political decisions that may be unpopular or risky. This blending of military duty and political loyalty can strain professional officers. Economic pressure adds to the stress. Sanctions, limited investment, and slow growth affect state budgets and military funding. When resources are tight, competition and frustration often rise within institutions that depend on state support. Another factor is the regional environment. Belarus's strategic position between Russia and Europe places it at the center of geopolitical rivalry. Military leaders are acutely aware that decisions made in Minsk can have consequences far beyond national borders. Joint exercises, foreign troop deployments, and security agreements have intensified scrutiny within the armed forces. Some generals may see these moves as necessary protection, while others may fear loss of sovereignty or increased risk of conflict. The leadership's approach to dissent has historically been uncompromising. Protests and opposition movements have been met with force, often involving security services and military support. This history shapes how current tensions are understood. Generals who have spent their careers focusing on defense may feel uneasy about being drawn into domestic political enforcement. Over time, this discomfort can turn into quiet resistance or internal debate. Information control plays a major role in this story. State media emphasizes unity and loyalty, while alternative sources highlight division and conflict. The truth often lies somewhere in between, obscured by propaganda and speculation. In authoritarian systems, disagreements rarely play out openly. Instead, they surface through leaks, sudden dismissals, or unexplained policy shifts. Each of these signals becomes a clue for analysts trying to read the balance of power. Personnel changes at the top of the military are especially telling. When respected generals are reassigned or removed without clear explanation, questions naturally arise about the reasons behind those decisions. The leadership frames such changes as routine or strategic. Critics, however, see them as signs of mistrust or attempts to preempt dissent. This difference in interpretation fuels the narrative of internal struggle. Public confidence is deeply affected by these dynamics. When citizens sense uncertainty at the top, it can undermine the perception of stability that authoritarian regimes rely on to maintain control. At the same time, fear remains a powerful force. Many within the military and society remember the consequences of open opposition. This fear can keep tensions hidden even when dissatisfaction is widespread. The term dictator itself reflects how opponents view the leadership. It emphasizes centralized power, limited political freedom, and reliance on coercion. For supporters, the same figure is portrayed as a guarantor of order and independence. This clash of narratives extends into the military. Some generals may align with the leadership's vision of strong centralized control, while others prioritize institutional integrity and national interest over personal loyalty. History offers relevant parallels. In many countries, tensions between military elites and authoritarian rulers have emerged during periods of economic strain or external pressure. Outcomes vary widely, from negotiated reforms to abrupt power shifts. Belarus's situation is shaped by its own unique history. The legacy of the Soviet system, combined with decades of consistent leadership, has created deeply entrenched habits of obedience and hierarchy. Breaking those habits is not easy. Even generals who privately disagree with political decisions may hesitate to act, knowing the risks involved for themselves and their families. The international community watches closely. Any sign of military defiance could alter regional security calculations and diplomatic strategies. This external attention adds pressure on both sides of the internal divide. Western governments often frame the turmoil in terms of democracy and human rights. Their statements can influence public perception, but also harden the leadership's stance against perceived foreign interference. Russia's role is particularly complex. As Belarus's closest ally, Moscow values stability and predictability. Tensions between generals and leadership in Minsk raise concerns about control and alignment. For Belarusian generals, the relationship with Russia is both a resource and a constraint. Cooperation brings training and support, but it also limits autonomy and fuels domestic controversy. The leadership's response to rumored dissent has been firm. Public displays of unity, loyalty pledges, and patriotic rhetoric aim to reassure supporters and deter wavering officials. Behind the scenes, however, quiet negotiations may be taking place. Authoritarian systems often rely on behind the curtain compromises to manage elite conflict without public drama. The generals themselves are not a monolithic group. They differ in background, ideology, and ambition. Some may see reform as necessary, while others prioritize survival within the existing system. This internal diversity makes the situation harder to predict. A single unified challenge is unlikely, but multiple small disagreements can gradually weaken cohesion. Public protests, even if suppressed, also influence military thinking. Seeing large segments of society express dissatisfaction can force officers to reflect on their role and responsibilities. At the same time, memories of chaos in other countries serve as a warning. Many within the military fear that sudden change could lead to instability or foreign domination. This fear is often exploited by the leadership, which presents itself as the only barrier against disorder. The message is clear: loyalty equals stability, dissent equals chaos. The struggle between generals and ruler is therefore as much psychological as it is political. It revolves around narratives of safety, identity, and national destiny. Rumors play a powerful role in shaping this struggle. Even unverified stories can erode trust and force actors to react defensively, sometimes creating the very instability they fear. The digital age accelerates this process. Information spreads faster than official responses, allowing speculation to fill the void left by silence. For analysts, separating signal from noise is difficult. Genuine signs of elite conflict are mixed with exaggeration, misinformation, and wishful thinking. What is clear is that the balance between military professionalism and political loyalty is under strain. How that strain is managed will shape Belarus's near future. Repression alone may not be enough to restore confidence. Without addressing underlying grievances, pressure can continue to build beneath the surface. Reform, on the other hand, carries its own risks. Concessions may be seen as weakness, encouraging further demands from both elites and the public. This dilemma defines the current turmoil. The leadership must choose between tightening control and adapting to change, while generals weigh loyalty against conscience. For ordinary Belarusians, the stakes are high. Military conflict within the state could bring economic disruption, insecurity, and international isolation. Yet many also hope that elite tensions could open space for gradual change. Even small shifts at the top can have significant ripple effects throughout society. The future is uncertain. There may be no dramatic showdown, no clear victory for either side. Instead, the struggle could play out slowly through reshuffles, policy tweaks, and shifting alliances. Such outcomes are common in systems designed to absorb shocks without breaking. They preserve continuity while quietly adjusting power relationships. Still, the narrative of generals versus dictator resonates because it captures a real tension. It reflects the limits of control and the human element within rigid structures. No leader, however powerful, governs alone. Reliance on institutions means relying on people, each with their own interests and limits. As long as those people remain aligned, the system holds. When alignment weakens even slightly, uncertainty grows. Belarus now stands in that uncertain space. The turmoil may not lead to immediate change, but it signals that the system is under pressure. Watching how the leadership and the generals navigate this moment will reveal much about the resilience of authoritarian rule in a changing world. In the end, this story is not just about power struggles at the top. It is about how states respond to stress, how institutions adapt, and how societies interpret signs of change. The confrontation between generals and ruler, whether overt or hidden, reflects deeper questions about legitimacy and future direction. Those questions remain unanswered, and that is precisely why the situation continues to command attention. As events unfold, the real outcome may be less dramatic than headlines suggest, but no less important. Because even without open rebellion, the quiet tension between authority and obedience can reshape a nation's path. And that ongoing, unresolved struggle is what defines the current turmoil in Belarus.